Just popping in the recording for a change. Thank you all for coming today. I'm Deborah Turner, of course, most of you know that. And Dr. Mary Clark is co-host of this meeting. You've joined the 360-degree volunteer engagement idea exchange, which is a place where every comments and ideas and suggestions are helpful and useful and appreciated. Today's topic is in honor of National Volunteer Month, but we didn't want to talk about things in the way in which we normally do in April, which is all about rewards and recognition and the summits and a lot of those kinds of things that we get as volunteers and think about as staff. This time we wanted to talk about how we keep that volunteer energy going. And our topic for today is self-care for volunteers. How do we reduce burnout and prolong volunteer tenure, even though I'm not sure that volunteer and prolonging volunteer tenure is what we want to do at all times, but it might be. But and so I'm really excited today to have our special guest, and I'm sure many of you know her. If not, you will consider her as knowledgeable and important to things in terms of those of us who are aging as I do. She's been a friend for a long time and a co-worker as a volunteer, and that is Helen Mack, and we call her Mack, and that's what she goes by. She's a gerontologist, and she is a volunteer, I say extraordinaire. Now, without further ado, I'd like Miss Mack to begin helping us on the topic.
Hi, guys. I recognize a lot of faces, miss a lot of faces that I haven't been able to see in person. I am one of those people that right now is in the middle of cataract surgery. So I have one eye that has been done and the other eye that's going to be done next week. And so I'm living in this very strange interim kind of world. But what I'm going to ask you today is we're talking about self-care, which is what's really important for all of us. And I'm going to ask you to just be really indulgent. And we're going to be intentional about just thinking about ourselves. For the time period that I talk with you, we're going to just not share beyond our own pencil and paper. So if you've got a pencil and piece of paper, I'm going to ask you to use that. And we're going to go through a few exercises. And I'm literally asking you to, for the next 10 minutes or so, just get inside you. No thoughts of anyone else, just you and your own self-care. So we're going to be intentional about this, even a little indulgent. And I want you to want to start with, I'm an old English major and I have quotes for everything there is. And I'm going to start with Emily Dickinson's quote on, "I'm out with lanterns looking for myself." And I'm going to ask you to use your pen and paper as your lanterns today as you look for yourself for self-care. And I've got a series of questions, and I'm going to pose the question and then give you some time to write. You're not going to share it with anybody but yourself. So just be as indulgent and as intentional as you choose to be. Then when we're done with this piece, Mary and Deborah will tie it into how to help yourself as a volunteer, because we know one of the best pieces of self-care is taking care of others. But right now, just you, complete self-indulgence. It'll be a strange feeling for a bunch of us. So the first question is, When you daydream, what does that look like? And if you'll just write that down, when you daydream, what does it look like? And I'm asking you to use the pencil because it's a more connected way to your whole body and brain. The second thing I want you to respond is, what do you think about when I ask you, where is your comfortable space? What do you think about when I ask you, what do you think is your comfortable place? Third one. In the morning, what would make you say, this is going to be a good day? In the morning, what would you say, this is going to be a good day? The fourth and next to last one is, what puts a smile on your face? What puts a smile on your face? And five and last question. What's the theme music that you want playing in the background of your life? What's the theme music that you want playing in the back of your life? I hope that has put you in a space that's a little more at ease. And when we talk about self-care, I'm sure I'm not telling you anything new when I share with you that we talk about physical self-care, emotional self-care, mental self-care, social self-care, and spiritual self-care. And these have become such a standard thing that even now we have the social drivers of health that the medical field now says, oh yeah, it's not just the symptoms we need to talk about on the body, but it's also all these other elements that have our own self-care that we need to think about when we're talking about what's the status of this person that we're looking at. So self-care is one of those things that's so very personal. The very thing that brings one of us deep pleasure and good serenity causes another one of us to have a headache and leave the building when stuff starts happening. The reality is, I had just read where self-care is now a $10 billion industry. Think of that, 10 billion with a B industry for us to know how to take care of ourselves. And the reality is we know in our own self how to do that. But a lot of the times we need a little bit of help doing it. The Japanese have a concept called Kaizen, Kai, which means change, and Zen, which means, virtue or goodness. And it's the idea that all you need is a little small change over a period of time to make a major change for you and get yourself into another place. So when you're thinking about your self-care, you don't have to think, oh my God, what am I going to do in each one of those domains to get myself in a better place? You just need to make a little shift, and it can be a small thing. And what happens is those small things start adding up. Japanese have it down to a fine science with the way they move through it. I don't know how to pronounce the word other than the fact that I've seen it written. I have never heard anyone say the word, but it's Kaizen. And it's the idea of a small step. You don't have to change everything in your life to get yourself in a better place of self-care. And you don't have to start looking at all of those domains at the same time to be working on self-care. This is not a major project. This is how you yourself, and in yourself what it is that it takes to get yourself to where in the morning you've got a smile on your face, and that you know what it is you want out of life itself. So as I say, it's really very personal, and taking those small steps is really important. In these days where we are really stressed, it's probably even more thoughtful about looking at the kinds of things you can do to take better care of yourself, dealing with stress that's out there and is pervasive. One of the quotes from G.R. Chesterton is, you should not knock down random fences. You need to know why you have that fence, what that fence is a benefit for you, and then keep it there until you know why it's there and whether or not you want to leave it there or take it away. Sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to have that fence until it's no longer serving the purpose for you. One of those fences that I have been building and am now treasuring, that I would have said to you before would not be a fence, is I don't watch the news as often as I used to. And I have found that that is a great self-care fence for me to own. And sometimes I have to patch it because I say, oh dear, maybe I don't need it. I need to get really into what's going on. And then I say, I might not need that. So think about those things that you need to keep as your defenses also as you're dealing with self-care. And as I said, it's indulgent, and you need to be indulgent. There are myths about self-care where they say that's being selfish. It's not selfish at all. Science research says that it's the best thing you can do for yourself. When you're a caregiver, one of the big pieces we keep reminding others of is you got to take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else. You got to love yourself before you can love anybody else. And the other piece is they say, I don't have time to take care of myself. Well, you need to take the time, and you need to fit it in as best you possibly can. One of my best self-care actions is my cup of coffee in the morning. I don't want to hear anybody. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want anybody to talk to me. I don't want anything other than my great cup of coffee. And the mug I put it in is important to me. I have different mugs for different occasions, and my daughter thinks I'm nuts. But to me, the vessel holding that coffee is as important as the coffee itself. And that's my form of self-care. I can tell you that you know what it is you need for yourself if you stop and reflect on what it is that makes you feel good, and then start moving to those things and figuring out how to lessen those things that are bringing you those pain points. One of the things that helps me with the bit about the fences is I can be an advocate and I can take steps to help deal with that. And that helps my self-care also. And as I close this, I'm going to tell you about the fact that I am an absolute advocate for a group called the Action for Happiness that comes out of Berkeley. And it has a tremendous website that you might be interested in. And the new term for self-care, are you ready for this one, guys? Is psychological sovereignty. So hold on to your psychological sovereignty. There's also a new book out that I'm really interested in, and it's called Hope for Cynics. And it asks you to move from being cynical to just being skeptical, and gives you the idea that there is hope and that there is a surprising science around human goodness and human happiness. This is part of the group that's called The Next Big Idea, and they're always researching which books will have the most influence. They're probably a big part of that $10 billion a year market that they talk about. But this is one of the books that I'm now working on, because reading for me is one of my best ways to take self-care. So with that in mind, I thank you for the time that you have given me. I always appreciate seeing smiling faces and knowing that there are other people out in the world that volunteer as I do, because I have these big brothers who think I'm out of my mind because I'm doing something where I'm not getting a paycheck for it, because they would not have that as their way of being in the world. So I want to thank you for all of the volunteering you do and how much that brings back to the world, and ask you to keep thinking about what that self-care is looking like. What are you doing with your lanterns going out looking for yourself? And at this point, Deborah and Mary, if you'd like to talk about how to take those lanterns out there into the volunteer world, go for it.
Well, thank you, Mack. Thank you. I just love Mack. There is a question in the chat. Adriana is asking, are you referring to fences as boundaries?
I'm thinking you're asking the group to respond to this, right, Mary?
Oh,
This was for you.
This was for you.
Oh, I guess I better pay attention to the question then. You want to repeat it?
So you had mentioned fences, and so she's asking, are you referring to fences as boundaries?
I am referring to fences as that kind of thing you need to take care of you. It can be permeable, it can be non-permeable. It's whatever you need in relation to taking better care of you. I mean, if there's something in your life that's toxic, then I would say my fence around that would be rather impermeable. And a lot of the times the news to me is toxic, and I have to keep it on the other side of me. Good question. Thank you.
It is. And I see Karen has her hand up. Karen, is this a question for Matt?
Yes, it is. So here's what I struggle with, which may sound really weird, but
we all have
there's
great
so
struggles.
Yeah, there's so much stuff going on, especially nowadays, that's wrong in the world. A lot of it doesn't personally affect me, but it affects the world around me. And I do think I have a very good life, but it's hard to really enjoy it when there's so much other just horrible stuff going on around me. So how do you get past that besides just saying, "Oh, well, of course you deserve to feel wonderful." I mean, that's just a platitude as far as I'm concerned. But what can you really do when literally the world feels like it's in chaos, but the chaos isn't your chaos?
And thanks, Karen. And I think what I would say to you is that you do whatever kind of actions will allow your empathy to be shown to the rest of the world. I think words have a lot of power in doing that. I think how you treat other people has a lot of that power. You're not saying, oh, I'm sitting here and I am fine. You're saying, I get what's going on in your world. What are some of the things that I might be able to do? If it's only expressing my concern and saying, I'm going to support you in this. I'm going to do activist kinds of things out in the world that counter that. One of the small things is just the subtle ways you respond to other people when you're out in the public. If you're smiling at them, if you're trying to help them and not do the opposite of it. I really think words have a tremendous strength, and your supportive words can show others that they belong in this world, no matter how difficult it is for them, and that we can honor that they belong in this world also. I don't know if that
Thank
helped.
you. It does. Thank you.
And Mac, that's a great segue into our questions for today, because we're talking about self-care, and part of self-care is managing what you can do for yourself. And everyone on this call has human compassion because we're in the business of compassion. So at some point, we realize that we can only control so much. And that's where the self-care and the focus of this conversation comes in. So, Karen, acknowledging that, yes, there is a whole lot going on, like Max said, but then realizing what can I do for myself so that I can kind of keep my equilibrium, at a pace where I can be okay to smile at someone who needs a smile, and it not take anything else from me. So, Mac, thank you so much for that exercise and for getting us started thinking about ourselves, because most of us as staff and volunteers, we're always focused on the external. We're focused on serving our communities. We're focused on serving our AARP and all the mission that AARP has. So today we're talking about self-care. And I am a strong advocate of self-care. And one of the questions that Mac asked was, what was the third question, Mac? You're on mute.
It's what makes a good day.
In the
What makes
morning, what makes you say that it's going to be a good day?
Yeah.
And for me, that's just waking up and getting up, because I know that there's so many people that cannot do that. And that's where my self-care starts, because I want to make sure that I do everything within my power every day, whether it be just a little thing, to ensure that I keep moving so that I can wake up and I can get up. And that starts my day off better than any day than the day before or any day I can ask for, because I know the rest of it is up to me. So, with that in mind, the questions that I have today are, how do we encourage self-care? And I have for volunteers, but I know that there's staff on here. So, this is a staff and volunteer conversation. So, how do you encourage self-care for yourself and for the volunteers? And how should volunteers be supported in achieving self-care? And I know that I've been online and seen some wonderful things, and especially following the pandemic, when we were easing back into the community, I know that there were several states that were doing things to make volunteers comfortable getting back out there, and there were several self-care opportunities, but I know that many of them are represented here. So let's hear from you. How do you encourage your volunteers to do self-care, and how should volunteers be supported to do this, as well as staff? Anybody want to respond to that? Antoine, I'm calling on you because
Oh,
Amy,
Mary, why you?
Amy, you're next because I know you do some things
Oh,
down in Florida too.
man, oh gosh, good thing I don't know how to swim. So self-care. So I'll say and it's funny, I literally just got into the office because we had an event where volunteers are the lead and I'm supporting them. So I try to encourage the volunteers to know that I'm here to support you in the work that we're doing together. And I literally try to encourage volunteers to make sure that they unplug from the work that we ask them to do. So we as staff can get into a little bit of a get on a little bit of a hamster wheel here, and I know my colleagues will nod if they're on camera or not, but there's a number of events that happen back to back to back to back. There are things that are always going on. And so we can get into the habit of just doing and doing and doing and not taking a break, even though we tell other people to take a break. So I try to encourage the volunteers to, be okay with saying, I'm not available and I'm not going to take it personal. And then for me, I don't live the same advice that I give. But I try to, when I take vacation, just be off and recharge. And when I'm home, try to be home. I ask my wife for permission to do work when I'm at home if I'm not on the clock. And but it's just being comfortable with the work that I do. And so not trying to be online at 11 o'clock because so and so is online at 11. If I want to be, then that's one thing. If I don't, then don't. So just trying to make those boundaries much more defined for myself, and then encouraging volunteers to establish their boundaries and make sure that they let me know when they're not going to cross it. That make any sense?
It makes a whole lot of sense. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And Kim is probably going to co-sign and tell me some things that you're doing in California too. Kim, you want to go ahead?
Sure. I work with, I volunteer with Friendly Voices. And just to recap it, all of our agents have, I go backwards. Our clients get called once a week for a 15-minute friendly chat. And our agents talk to different people on different weeks. They don't keep the same person. It's a variety. And we do talk about self-care during the initial training, but I just realized that we focus more on taking care of the client. If the client's upset, here's what we do. And I think now, once hearing that the discussion today is like, oops, we've forgotten about our agents. We've got to go back now and see what we can do to make sure they have self-care better. It's good to focus on the client, but we've done that so much. I think now we need to go a different direction and put more in for the agents. So thank you for the ideas.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And I'm sure that hearing that will impress upon some others that maybe that focus needs to turn in the opposite direction toward the volunteers or the staff members too. So thank you. Alvaro, what's going on in Illinois?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'll just piggyback on what Antoine said, because I think that, I think the biggest thing that I try to do is I try to respect boundaries. I'm a caregiver for my 93-year-old mom, and my 86-year-old uncle. They both, I guess, kind of live with me. We all live in the same building. And my uncle has been sick for the last 2 months. So he's been in hospital and in hospitals, rehab, and so I'm currently sleeping on my mom's couch, so she's not alone. And so I think respecting boundaries is the biggest thing, not just for myself, but also for others. So even if I have that thought in the middle of the night, or late at night, I would rather jot it down and not send that email until the morning, because even though I want to get it off my out of my head and off of my chest, you never know how somebody else is going to react. So sometimes people will reply, right? Like they'll see an email come in late and they think it's important. So then you create this chain of events that you might be pulling somebody away. And so I think it's also important to have those boundaries even for yourself. So, if I don't have an event on the weekend or anything, work related, I don't touch my phone, my work phone. I don't open up my laptop or my iPad, because we're connected in too many ways nowadays. So I try to make that space, because I start looking at it as, if I'm not working, then this is the time that I have to dedicate to my loved ones. And if I am constantly being pulled away, then I'm cheating them out of their time. So I try to practice that also, with with others.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And again, I think just hearing somebody else say what they're doing helps to reinforce in us that, number one, it's okay to take those extra steps to do it for ourselves. And it gives us some reminders of some things that maybe we can do. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. Self-care can just be a few moments of peace and quiet. And I know when I was caring for my mother and I drove over 100 miles on the weekend to get there after working all week, my self-care was just sitting in the car in the driveway for about 10 minutes before I went in the house, because I was exhausted from driving and working, and I needed to have a different energy to go into the house and be the caregiver for the weekend. So that 10 minutes of just, I could fall asleep or I could just sit there and have peace and quiet. But that for me was what gave me that second win so that I could keep going. And that was a gift as far as I was concerned. Um, Another question is, when is it appropriate to check in with a volunteer on how they are feeling? And some of you have already added that to your response, so I'm glad that that's already been done. And what do we do with the response if it indicates that the desire to continue service may be ending? So, they may have been just waiting for that moment for you to ask, well, how are you feeling about volunteering? And if they have a lot going on at home, they may have been waiting for that exit, and you may have given it to them. So anybody want to respond to this? And I see Kathy's hand is up. Kathy?
I was gonna it was really a little bit to what you were just talking about. But I just one of the things I find is that we have a lot of volunteers that have had major corporate experience where they're like general managers, vice presidents, and they operate at a completely different pace than some of our other volunteers. And it's like, how do you share, and help volunteers understand that it's a different life experience? And sorry if I'm not responding directly to your question or providing insight, but as I'm listening to this conversation, it just was really resonating with me of, we have some incredibly talented volunteers that were in the corporate world, and they bring that same sense of, I don't know, prioritization, urgency, professionalism. And then you have other volunteers that, you know, they're not used to that rigor and that structure. And I see tension that gets created there that might at some point create more tension and make volunteers feel like this isn't really volunteering, this is like a job. So
Well, that's a good one. Anybody else want to respond to that before my voice adds to it? Because I know we have some other voices that could as easily respond as I could. Mac, Deborah, anybody else on the call?
Hey Mary, this is Antoine again. I'll jump in because I gotta. Of course, this is one of those days where you're double booked, so I gotta leave in like 2 minutes. But
Okay.
the reason I wanted to chime in on this one is because this is something that I know I've done quite a bit here in the California state office. When folks do chime in and say, you know, I'm, you know, like you said, like the question says, I'm about ready to wrap it up, or and this isn't the conversation where we may need to ask someone to wrap it up. That's a totally different. But
It is.
in this case, it's maintaining the relationship beyond the volunteer experience, where we try to make sure people know whatever you, if you need something later on, we want you to feel comfortable coming back, right? And then also if you decide, yeah, I kind of want to come back and do, the door is always open. But just acknowledging the fact that they feel like it's time for them to move on is so very important. To where, you know, we're not trying to hold on to them or make them feel bad about leaving. And I always try to encourage the volunteers that I work with to connect with the work and less to me. Now I'm I'm not trying to say I want to be a hermit, but what I want to happen, so if I happen to leave for whatever reason, I want them to continue to volunteer with AARP if they believe in the work, and not just volunteer because I'm there. That's a, you know, it feels good. It's, you know, it's a good feeling. You know, somebody's there because they like to see you, they like to work, they like to talk with you. But to me, it's more important that there's a connection to the work as a work, and the organization is going to long outlive me. And so if you're connected to the work, that's a different level of commitment that the volunteer will have. So, you know, trying to encourage that, because, you know, if that's the case, then when you feel like it's time for you to leave, then I hope that the relationship is strong enough to where you feel like you can just come to me and say, I'm ready to go, instead of hanging on for 6 more months and you hate it, right? I call and you don't respond. I send an email, you don't respond. And then I call you and you're like, well, I just want to stay on the right. I appreciate that, but you know, it's better if you just, I'm good. I want to move on, and that's absolutely fine. So just want to chime in, but thank you for the opportunity.
Well, excellently stated. And yes, thank you so much. And thanks for joining us. I know you're double booked and appreciate you being here, and always good to see you. Karen.
Yeah, I mean, I think you raised an interesting question, Mary, about like or it wasn't Mary, you didn't say this, it was Kathy McCall who said this, about people with differing gifts, differing, I guess would be the term, that they're bringing to the volunteer space. And that's an interesting question because in Maryland, we have highly motivated and highly active, extremely accomplished people who offer to volunteer with AARP. And we also have people who, you know, they may have corporate experience, like our state president has a lot of corporate experience. We have people with high levels of government experience. And we have people who are blue collar, and we have people who are white collar. They're all over the map, but a good percentage are highly motivated. And I think it's really a kind of a dance to not have like an atmosphere of competition where you have these highly motivated people who are just charging, and other people who aren't doing as much feeling like, well, yeah, I guess, gee, yeah, they're really awesome. I guess I'm only okay. And, what I mean, and to some extent, it's the office atmosphere and an appreciation for whatever can be offered. It's like whatever's offered is a gift. It's not about how much and and how much you do. And it's not your job to set the world on fire. It's more like, do you have something you would like to offer? Whatever it is, we are grateful for it. And I see Dale's here on the call. I'm going to call you out, Dale, because she's a human dynamo. I mean, she just has like single-handedly like corralled Southern Maryland and created like a volunteer network out of nothing, really. And it's like the rest of the volunteers could be going, yeah, oh, Dale, okay, she's like showing us up. But she does a great job, and AARP Maryland's really grateful for her service. I don't do what Dale does, but I do other things. And I think the office is grateful for my service too. So maybe, I don't know, expressions of gratitude, which I think our office is good with, but maybe even more so because people can be really competitive, even in the volunteer space.
Thank you, Karen. And I'm hopeful that that added a little bit to what Kathy was looking for in a response. So I appreciate your responding. We have a couple more questions and just a little bit of time. So Deborah's internet is a little unstable now, so I'm going to take her question. And that question is, what mechanisms could be in place to make certain volunteers know and avail themselves to self-care? Or do you have, a process of just letting volunteers know that self-care is something that you promote? We all have those caregiver or care for caregiver DIYs that I know many of us have as part of our speakers bureau. So we're telling the community to care for caregivers. But again, this month, this volunteer appreciation month, we're focusing on self-care for caregivers. Self-care for volunteers, and I'm extending that to staff as well. So is there any mechanisms in place to do that? Anybody want to share? Dale, I see your hand. Unmute and let us hear from you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
We can hear
With
you.
the mechanisms that Karen was talking about, because I cover, I hate to say, rural areas of the county of Maryland. So to get my volunteers engaged, I let them know that they can, like you say, after a certain time, you can always call me, but I'm learning that we have to listen to each other. When we do get together, sometimes we have to hear the daycare stories of their parents or their kids and stuff. But yet they still want to volunteer. But I think most of the time I enjoy my mechanism for me is that they know I will always listen. And plus they know I love to talk, and we make fun of things. It's, oh my goodness, that's not silly at all, and make them feel like whatever we do in the organization or when we out at an outreach thing, that I let them know like, wow, that could be us. What can we do better? It's a way of listening and incorporating us as a small group, since it's the counties.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And sometimes listening is self-care.
Is the key, is listening.
Just let a person talk. Just
yes.
Let them be the center of attention, because
yes.
they've probably been poured into by everybody else, and they're like a sponge. They are saturated, and they just need to wring some of that out so that they can feel light and they can go on with their day. So thank you so much for sharing that, Dale. We're almost out of time, and in the interest of your time and my time, and I know you've heard my voice a lot today, but Deborah, are you able to do the closing, or you want me to keep talking? Okay. So what I want to say is this.
Mary?
Can I
Yes.
interrupt you for a second,
Will.
Dr. Mary Clark?
Yes, Will, go ahead.
Hey, sorry I'm coming in at the end, but I just want to extend an appreciation to all the volunteers here. Self-care is critical. We're in it for the long haul, and many of you have been in it with us for the long haul, and we couldn't be more appreciative. I know some of you have heard me say this, but it's it's so true every day that we couldn't do 1/1000th of the work that we do without you. So much appreciation. Please take care of yourself. It's the old story. Make sure you put your mask on first, or take care of yourself first, so that you can take care of the people that you love and are caring for, but most importantly, caring for yourself. And for the staff, same thing. We've got a long road to hoe, and we've got a lot of work ahead of us. Make sure you're finding those moments to take care of yourself throughout the day and every day. And a special appreciation to Deborah and Dr. Clark for carrying this torch of 360 for quite some time now. I think Deborah's on her 7th year or something. These are great conversations. I know you all get so much from them, and I couldn't appreciate them more. And again, extending to all the volunteers, thank you. And for those of you that don't know me, sorry, I jumped right in. I'm Will Stoner. I'm the Director of Outreach for the Office of Volunteer Engagement, and fortunate enough to be able to work with this amazing group of staff and volunteers to make sure that volunteers get the support they need across the association. So thanks much for letting me jump in there at the last second. And I know now we're a minute over. I was very verbose, so sorry about that.
That's okay, Will. I'm going to just take a few more seconds just to promote our Fast Track and our Roost podcast and the Volunteer Portal Learning Paths and the AARP Way, all these wonderful things happening. Please read the OVE update when it comes out to learn more about those. On May 13th, 360 topic will be communicating challenges with volunteers and developing leaders to add value to programmatic efforts. This has been recorded for March, and it will be posted in the Exchange Chatter in the volunteer portal. We want to thank Mack for beginning this meeting so strong and focusing on our own self-care. Thank you, Deborah, because I wouldn't be here if it was anybody else but you. The OVE staff, we love your support. You have empowered us to do the things that we're good at and we enjoy, and we thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It's always good to see your faces. Take care of yourself. See you next month, and bye-bye.
Do we?
Is it the storm, Deborah?
Do you want to stop the recording?
Yeah.